Welcome, everyone, to Asians Represent. Welcome to the podcast here on Twitch, on YouTube, or if you're listening, in your ears for the audio listeners.
In your
ears. For those of you who are new, because I realize that when we
I'm really sorry.
When we do a different topic like Magic the Gathering, which we've done twice on the wrap-up episode 13 and 15. 15 was actually one where we looked at the original Kamigawa set. I'll put a link in at the end of this episode on YouTube and in the show notes for audio listeners. This is the podcast where we sort of celebrate and examine Asian representation in tabletop games and pop culture. I'm Daniel, and I am here with three amazing guests, folks who I feel like I talk about magic a lot with. I have Michelle, Jackie, and Emma. Folks who, if you listen to the show or watch the show, you know these faces.
You've seen us.
Perhaps
We're no before.
You've seen us, heard us.
I'm gonna now do the thing that I know Izza hates, and I'm gonna praise all of you. The best, the best.
How dare you, Daniel?
I know. How dare you? The best, most talented ceramicist in all of TTRPGs, and the tied for #1 biggest Fast and Furious fan, Michelle. Kiln Fiend Fodder, the best. Michelle, you were one of the people who got me back into Magic and helped me kind of like navigate it initially.
#sorry, I'm not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry.
We
You
have
got me back in now too, Michelle. I blame you.
We have
sorry.
another victim of Michelle's MTG enthusiasm, Jackie, former Magic broker, our ranger who picked the Florida resident subclass, Jackie, illustrious publisher, one of the heads of Unbreakable Publishing. You folks have put out some amazing shit. We talk about that a lot. There is always an Unbreakable link down below on Twitch. So Unbreakable is special to Asians Represent. And one of my oldest friends, an amazing cultural consultant, a doctor of archaeology.
Is there a doctor in the room?
Is there a doctor? My friend is a doctor, and I would 100% say that on a plane.
No. No.
The flight attendant's like, we need this analyzed for what kind of bread?
Yeah.
I
What
need
plants were they using?
What starch is present?
What starch? And pulls out a piece of pottery, just like, what's on
What starch? But that said, we have Dr. Emma Yasui, archaeologist, cultural consultant extraordinaire. I am
Mono green and green black player.
mono green and green black player. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm the guy who plays Krenko, and then everybody picks on me.
Yeah, because
As we should.
As we should.
I'm the
I'm
one
that
who
guy.
sticks 20 swords on a cat and then just lets it go free.
You just-
I'm the person who decided to have a storm count of 25 and just cast a grape shot for no reason.
yeah. And thanks,
Jackie.
Ken, in the chat for saying that I deserve it. But yeah, that's me. But I'm also my favorite deck actually that I have is my Yuriko deck. I absolutely love my Yuriko deck. A, because I think it's really fucking cool. B, because it is the first deck that I made on my own. It's the first commander deck I made on my own. My Krenko deck, all the credit goes to Peter. Peter, one of our Discord mods, basically said, buy these cards. And I said, okay, and I bought them. I made some modifications later as I kind of got back into Magic. And by got back into Magic, I got heavily addicted to it. But yeah, I updated. But the Yuriko deck was the first one that I ever made on my own, no input, and I've been slowly making it, trying to improve it. And so when they announced this sort of Neon Dynasty, this Kamigawa Neon Dynasty sort of set, I was really intrigued. Cautiously at first, because like we talked about in the wrap-up episode 15, it was the intent behind the original Kamigawa is the kind of intent that resulted in the problems of the set. The set, first of all, mechanically wasn't well received, as we learned. There are certainly some cool Kamigawa cards that I have definitely benefited from in my Ninja deck. But at the same time, it's not the best example of Asian representation in Magic the Gathering. Now with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, we have a really good opportunity to try to push this hobby forward. And by we, I mean the community has a really good opportunity to have an honest discussion about what we want, not only from artistic representations to creators we want and folks who we want to see work on Magic more. So I'm really excited just to have this conversation. This is not, an episode where we're just going to sit here and praise the Neon Dynasty set. There are certainly things to celebrate about it, and we're going to talk about that. But we also want to talk about what's next, what could have been done, what needs to be improved on, because that's what you do when you're a fan of something. You want it to be better. You want more people to enjoy it. I think a lot of people, when they listen to Asians Represent or watch us or see 3 out of 4 people here have a habit of making really spicy Twitter threads, and that's okay. But when they see us making threads like that, or when they see us criticizing something like Oriental Adventures, or as the 4 of us have done, Karatur, they think, oh, you're just being haters. We're not. That's not what we're doing. We're talking about it and we're having these conversations because we want D&D, Magic the Gathering, any other game we've really talked about, we want them to be more welcoming to people. We want this game to be played by more people, because if more people play it, more products come out, and the game itself and the world and the people we see making it and the shows and personalities out there that we see promoting these projects are more reflective of the actual base. And that's what we want to see. So if we're critical of Neon Dynasty, we're not being fucking haters. I mean, I'm literally holding a card that I really fucking hate. We're going to talk about Dockside Chef. But there's a lot that I really, really love. And I think when we see members of the Asian community going in and trying to do something good here, going and trying to make a difference, we should uplift them. But again, just because you're Asian doesn't mean you are shielded from, feedback, right? Asians Represent itself has changed a lot, right? We have changed our tone. We've changed the kind of content that we make. We even changed how we produce the show to make it more sustainable for me to actually do.
Yeah.
So again, if you're listening to this or watching this, this is coming from a place of love. Magic the Gathering is very special to all of us in very different ways. One end, it's like, I just get to make squirrels, and that's totally valid, right?
It's a thing I do sometimes. I don't know.
Emma just goes out and makes squirrels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Just use it. It's like
Yep.
the polka dot man in
I have
Suicide
the
Squad.
Toski
You just have to-
exactly.
you just have to,
Right.
like,
Emma has got the Toski art card.
Oh, Toski art card, so good.
I'm still waiting for you to just pop off with Toski, but you never seem to get Toski when you play your squirrel
Yeah,
deck.
one day.
But like, here's the thing, like, I'm very grateful for Magic, and I want it to be better. So that's what this conversation is about. Long intro preamble over. That said, there are a couple things to talk about here. I wanted to kind of have this conversation organically. Michelle and I had earlier we just vented and had a discussion of things, and Emma later joined us. Jackie, you were out, but that's okay. And I think we came to the conclusion that it's more productive for us to talk about, the context in which this was made, and of which there is a ton of information out there, and what we think can be better. Now, we have some questions from patrons that I definitely want to address down the line. I'm going to start with them. We don't have to answer them right away. In fact, I'd love for us to answer them later, but I want you folks to think about them. Because in the past, I've said, hey, these are our patron questions, and then folks are just like, because sometimes they're really insightful and nuanced questions. So there's 3 questions. The first one is, what, if anything, is this set doing to help bring an Asian person into the hobby and make them feel comfortable? Right? And this actually ties to a topic that I wanted to talk about in the first place, and it's, how do you make Magic the Gathering a global game? Right? How do you succeed at this, and what's holding it back? Right? Second thing is, the second question is, they just wrote Dockside Chef. We'll talk about that. Doesn't need much thought. Actually, there is going to be a conversation around it because I think three of us had the same reaction, and Michelle, you had a different reaction to it. Initial reaction.
Initial, mostly because the art was very small.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Small art. Ishin,
Small
right?
art.
It happens. And the final one is a pretty, I think a pretty easy question, and it's how do the Oh nope, hard question. Misread it. Dyslexia. Sorry. How do the mechanics help enforce the idea that this is a Japanese-inspired setting, and how?
Ooh.
And then
That's a
they
good
also
question.
wrote, I'm
That's a
also
good question.
interested in the new mechanics. So I think these are all really fantastic questions. I mean, one's more of a statement. Talk about Dockside Chef.
Dockside Chef.
I think the overarching theme
yeah.
to these questions is really like, how does this communicate its Asianness, right? What is the intent to that? And how do you get Asian people and just people of various cultures all over the world playing Magic the Gathering? I think it's important for us to then also provide a little context to the viewers and listeners about where we're kind of coming as Magic the Gathering players. I played a lot of Magic the Gathering between 2007 and 2008. That's really it for me. And I stopped playing Magic because I was like, I can't afford this. I now have a good day job, and last year Wizards of the Coast were like, we're making a D&D set. And I said, fuck, I'm back.
There's always that one set. There's always that
There's
one
that
set that will bring you
I
back.
mean, I was excited originally for Strixhaven, and then I just can't play that. I won't touch any like Killian cards or anything like that. I just can't out of principle. But I got back recently with the D&D set, and basically since like December, we've been playing Commander almost like weekly. I went from having 0 Commander decks to having 8 Commander decks.
Yeah, welcome to that part of your life.
I have a passion for storage, so playing Magic also kind of works into my other passion of putting things in boxes, and then those boxes in other boxes, and then organizing those boxes. So there are multiple layers to why I like this. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. I didn't really play. I dabbled in high school, then played a lot in university, and then stopped for a really long time. So I'm kind of getting back into Magic. The story and lore of Magic was never a thing I thought about. Never. I didn't even realize there was one until very recently. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. We might as well go from left to right on our video overlay. Michelle, like, where are you coming from as like a Magic the Gathering player?
Gosh, okay. Well, I am what you call a Vorthos. So when I first started playing Magic the Gathering, I was a little later in life. This was back in 2014 when Magic Origins came out, when they were just starting the Gatewatch arc. And I got into it because the marginalized like queer group at my startup all played Magic. And then the startup was also like, we're just gonna blow a lot of money on booster sets. Like just open like 22 packs and create a sealed deck that way. And I'm like, okay. So got hooked from then on, and just got really interested in the story. So since then, I've done a lot of content creation for Magic. I've worked with a bunch of other content creators, such as Loading Ready Run, The Professor from Tulane Community College. I've written for Card Kingdom extensively on like character analysis and also some goofy ones like which planeswalkers are the most dateable.
Which one is the most dateable?
That's what we all need to know.
Oh God,
It's
I
an
need to dig
important
it up,
question.
but I mean,
Later.
That's a later question. That's a later question.
But Gideon's on that list for sure.
I'm gonna write this down as a patron question.
As a patron question. Who would you date? Tell me now. And then for a few years, I also had a comedy lore podcast called the Lore Goifs, where we riffed on lovingly a lot of the story for Magic up until Strixhaven, and then we were like, I was just like, can't, won't. So we've been on hiatus for a while, but in the meantime, I've still been, guesting on different things, continuing to tweet out my hot, spicy takes, and just play Magic with friends.
And don't forget tweeting about cat stuff too.
I tweet so much cat stuff, and no one has told me to stop.
Yep.
So that's on
Why would
y'all.
we?
Why would we? I mean,
That's
you've seen
that's
the
a fair
stuff
point.
that you see the stuff I tweet about.
That's fair.
I don't.
This is
I don't
fair.
have any cats. I have to live vicariously through everyone else's having cats.
Or you could just get a cat.
You should also get
No!
get a cat.
Just get a cat.
Get a cat. Kitty cat.
That said, Jackie, the only catless one on the call right now.
The
catless
one.
Jackie.
That needs to be a car.
Jackie
So
the
that needs to be a
catless.
car.
Jackie the catless.
Jackie the catless, Florida resident, level 3. Jackie, where do you kind of sit in the Asian person playing Magic sort of thing? It's kind of
Man,
weird.
where do it was long ago when Ice Age was a set. So this is like in the 90s. And
No, text
so
starts scrolling. The galaxy far away.
far, right? And I started playing then, and I will admit that like I was the only Asian kid in my elementary school. So like I was the only I was like the only Asian minority person there. And a bunch of other people started getting into Magic, and they got me, and I got hooked into it. And I had like maybe a couple cards. I didn't have like a deck yet. I think I really hit Magic hardest was during the Onslaught block. So that's like the 2000s. And I was really into it around 2004, and then between 2006 through 9. I was pretty much what you would consider an Magic the Gathering broker. I used to buy and sell Magic the Gathering cards and buy them, sell them to other people, and I made a modest living out of it. Paid for at least several of my textbooks, at least, which is helpful because I'm in the United States. It's not like education's that affordable, and so. So I did that, and then I actually went cold turkey out of Magic around 2010, and I didn't come back until probably like sporadically. I would buy stuff right around the time of Magic Origins, like when they finally also like when Michelle came in as well. So like I would buy a few things once in a while when I'll be like, oh okay, this is a nice little thing. I'll buy something for myself, and then I stopped again around 2017, 18, and then I now just started back with everyone else because of Michelle.
Because of Michelle.
What have I done?
What have I done?
What have I done?
And then Emma, what about you?
Well, I started late last year, so only like a few real months of being a Magic player, and half jokingly, I'm going to say I was peer pressured into it by a bunch of Asian people. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
And it wasn't any particular set. I was just told that there are cards with squirrels. And so I went about trying to find all of them and to make a deck that was exclusively squirrels. I found a bunch of them are super expensive. And I'm still not sure I'm 100% on board with Magic.
You can always proxy. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are still so many elements of every time we play, I'm just like, this game is bullshit. There's always something where I'm like, nah, come on, man.
No, please, no, come on.
We are all very aware that we are buying into an extremely capitalist thing.
100%.
Yes, we are very keenly aware.
But that's
We are
why
extremely aware.
But that's why I think it's important.
Look. I had to talk about the fact that I even inherited someone else's collection, so I have twice the amount of Magic cards than I should have after this many years of buying and collecting cards.
I have no defense.
You know what? I actually remember when, Emma, you discovered all the squirrel cards, because we were in a call with our friend Mark, and he said, Daniel, I know you got back into Magic recently with the D&D stuff. He's like, I found a whole box of cards in my basement. He says, can you tell me about it? I'm like, I don't know. And I just pull up MTG Goldfish, and he's like, how much is this one worth? And I look it up, and I'm like, oh, this is a beta. And our friend ended up basically discovering that he had $10,000 worth of Magic the Gathering cards.
Yeah.
Vintage.
The first
Magic
card
the
he pulled up, Daniel looked it up. It was like $350, and you're like, "Put it down!
Put it down!" And he's like,
you're drinking a pop right now. Put it down.
And he had like snacks, and I was like, "Good God!"
That happens.
Did you get a
That
sleeve?
happens.
Did you get it put in a sleeve?
We ended up pressuring him and just sleeving everything, and he bought like $400 worth of sleeves.
Good.
Good.
It did not. He is a high-paying job for the Canadian government. He's okay. But yeah, protect those $10,000 cards. He had some really incredible stuff. And I remember it was that conversation where I was looking up the cards, and then Emma kept being like, "Oh, look, there's a squirrel." And I feel like that's the moment. But
that's my origin story.
That's your origin story.
Yeah, there's also, I posted on Twitter the first time I got some cards. So that whole like, friends say you should play Magic. Me goes out and finds all the squirrels.
You know what? I am the same way. When I first started playing Magic, I was also going down the squirrel train. So I was like, I'm gonna build squirrel tribal, or squirrel like species. Trying not to say tribal.
It's an
and
MTG
so
term,
I
though.
went.
Yeah,
it is, but we need to fix that.
Yeah.
You can take
We
it.
need to
Say,
fix
I'm just
that.
making a squirrel deck.
I'm just making a squirrel deck, and so I bought a Hermit Druid for I think maybe like $7. It's a foil.
When it was cheap and
it was like
available.
It was a foil Japanese Hermit Druid that was printed and revised. And
okay, so it's an affordable one.
So it was signed by Kev Walker, and who is the artist for that card. And I got it for real cheap. And then now I was like, how much? I asked a friend, like, how much do you think this would fetch? I'm like, she's like $400.
Yeah.
To the right collector, 100%. I'm like,
Yep. I actually helped a friend sell two cards to pay an entire month's rent.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So the reason
This
why I
game
wanted
is
to
bullshit.
this game's bullshit. Just put that.
Collectibles.
This game's bullshit. You know this isn't a sponsored stream when. That said, the reason why I wanted to ask that question is because Emma, you do one thing that I think is really interesting, and you don't just like collect squirrel cards. You collect like trading cards with representations of Jomon stuff and like Dogu and things like that.
Japanese archaeology, yeah.
Which I think is really cool. And you have like a document that you've shared on your Twitter a couple of times of like, you're like, this is Jomon stuff in pop culture.
Just one artifact only. That's what I've documented.
Yeah, just the Dogu's the figure.
I have like 270 examples now, FYI.
It's super cool. But
so cool.
Yeah.
So I think that like these games are very real to people, right? It's not like we have these like sort of like parasocial relationships with them, but it's that these are representations of real cultures. We see ourselves represented in these games. That's why our reaction to the Killian sort of narrative was so visceral, because that is very much a relatable Asian American story that they were trying to tell in the most unnuanced way. So that's why these conversations are important. Now, I think the best place to start is actually like, what is this set and what are they trying to tell? I know like in our chat, Jackie and Michelle, we kind of talked about how YouTube would kind of lead this like, what is this set? And like 5 to 10 minutes, like what are they trying to achieve here? Like for me, I'll take care of that thing in the chat, but like for me, it's just like when I'm looking at this set and when I was watching the world building episode, I thought it was interesting that they said, you know what, we just want to make a futuristic Japanese inspired world. And then it became Kamigawa. And then they ended up having to take this legacy and update it. But what is the story here? Because there is a story, and the story very much factors into the positive changes that they are trying to make. So that's why I think it's important for us to talk about that. And I know, Jackie, you've looked into all the lore stuff, and I know, Michelle, you love the Magic lore, and I just know nothing about it.
Yeah. Michelle, do you want me to cover the past and how it transfers into the future, and you can cover the current story?
I can cover the current story.
All right, so I'll cover the past. So in the past, the first Kamigawa block, Basically, what happened was, so the world of Kamigawa was actually originally divided into two to begin with. So the spirits and the mortal realm were two separate places, but they were still part of the same world. And eventually, what happened was the time rifts that occurred in this part of the Magic the Gathering storyline called the Time Rifts or the Time Spiral Crisis happened, and it caused basically the barriers between the two realms to basically bleed through and get weakened. And the Emperor of Kamigawa, Honda, decided to, is it Konda or Honda?
It's Konda.
Konda, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. So
I'm just
Konda,
imagining a car for being
Yeah.
like
Street Fighter.
I was like, it's like it's been a while.
Yeah. Like little tire
yes. Look, that's gonna happen eventually.
If it helps, it's Konda.
Konda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Konda. So what happened is the Emperor ends up stealing an aspect of the basically the kami of all kamis, and this upsets the balance, and all the kamis basically get angry and bleed into the world, and a full-out war ensues. And the major story plot threads from the novelizations and everything else basically ties into figuring out why are the kami so angry and upset, and what they could do to kind of heal it. And through the whole entire process, they eventually the central narrative figures figured out that there's the literal embodiment of all the spirits basically being trapped, and they have to break it and then release the spirit, and that's how you get Kodai.
Interesting. So yeah, there's this sort of antagonistic relationship between sort of spirits and humanity. Yeah,
it's very Nausicaa. It's very Nausicaa and Princess Mononoke kind of vibe in that regard, because it's like the spirits are disturbed and by mankind, and therefore they now rebel. They get upset and they target mankind. It has and it affects everyone else in Kamigawa. So and the long story short for that is that when they finally resolve it, they want to achieve balance, and so they try, and the planes slowly begin to merge, and then across that 1,200 years, the planes merge closer and closer together, and more spirits begin to live with the mortals and interact with the mortals, and the in between phase of those 1,200 years, basically, according to the lore, they get to go through a warring states period.
Okay.
There's that little sweat beat of just like, of course there is. Yeah. And then they go through according to the lore, they also have this section called the Age of Enlightenment, which I was like, of course they did.
Of course they did.
Of course they had like
a
you didn't think about that one.
thing.
And then they had a modern age, which of course they did. And so basically through that entire time period, basically Kamigawa modernizes, they go through an industrial revolution, and then they also the spirits and the more basically, in order to maintain the good faith of the spirits, the imperialists basically monitor, moderate, and regulate the entry points of where the spirit world and the mortal world kind of connect. And also that opened up a lot of magic, and then there was a boom of technology that occurred, and that's how they kind of justify how most of that led into it. And those two elements, the imperialists regulating the balance of the world, and these futurists trying to push the boundaries of what you can do, are the initial starting conflict of that lead into Neon Dynasty across the 1,200 years.
Yeah, and then Michelle, you've kind of done a lot of like looking at like what it currently is standing at right now.
Yeah. So picking up where Jackie left off. So we're now in quote unquote present day Kamigawa, which is supposed to be the events of this are supposed to be concurrent with essentially everything that's been happening with other planes of magic lore. So Innistrad with Crimson Vow, it's supposed to be contemporary with that. So basically what's happened is that we are focused on Eiganjo, which is the capital city of, it's basically supposed to be modern day Tokyo in a lot of sense, and in a lot of ways, and is taking a lot of inspiration from that. The emperor is missing. The Emperor has not been there for a very long time, and there is a new planeswalker, Kaito, who is the new ninja planeswalker, and is trying to find her across various different planes of existence, and is trying to figure out what happened. So Kaito and his sister are both representations of sort of the color pie argument philosophy that we see within the story. His sister is supposed to be much more of a traditionalist. He is much more of a futurist, and so he readily adapts technology. And to kind of piggyback out again off of what Jackie said, we're seeing a much more Spirited Away, a Studio Ghibli kind of in the sense of like, yeah, Spirited Away or maybe Totoro kind of influence here, where the kami are just parts of everyday life for us within this plane. Like we have more mundane kami just kind of hanging out, which is definitely much more contemporaneous with Shinto beliefs, which is nice. And so yeah, his actual Tanuki friend is a kami that has chosen to inhabit a little like Tanuki origami like machine, which is kind of adorable, and Pon-Pon-chan. And so when he was friends with the Emperor when he was very young, he saw her disappear when this guy with a metal arm showed up. And in Magic the Gathering, we all know what that means. It means Tezzeret's back. So
Tezzeret.
So Tezzeret, the like least effective baddie in all the multiverse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what's really bad is that Kyodai, who is the kami representative of the plane, is supposed to be like spiritually linked with the Emperor to maintain that balance. And so she left. He's like, you must have something to do with it. So he's been tracking around Tezzeret for a while. It's years later, Tezzeret does show back up. And so he's like, who is this metal man, though? And in his search to figure out who Tezzeret is, he comes across Tamio, who is a moonfolk. She's known as a sage. She's definitely the science mom. She has kids. She lives in Otawara, which is a like sky, basically city for all the rabbit moonfolk. Very cute. And so she helps him discover what shenanigans are going on. And when he discovers Tezzeret, he discovers that there's a whole bunch of like experiments being put upon the kami, like kidnapped kami. And then he meets like the most radical, best pants wearing person in the multiverse,
Best pants
Jin
wearing.
Gitaxis.
It's true.
Jin Gitaxis' best pants in the multiverse will fight.
It's true though.
Who is a really scary presence. This relates back to the Geiger horror plane of New Phyrexia, which is a plane that basically is seeking to complete with an A everyone by turning them into machines and robots, to cyborgs.
And that's why that complete is a mechanic in this.
Yes, that's why we
Yes.
see complete with the Tamio planeswalker.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
But we're going to talk about
Spoilers.
Not
mechanics.
to
Let's
ruin it,
talk
but
about
that just
that.
sounds like Dr. Robotnik.
Yes, he is
Yeah,
kind of
pretty
like
much.
a scarier Mr. Dr. Robotnik.
It's
Absolutely.
like the Borg, but it's the Borg, but more sinister.
See, this is why Emma's
Yeah,
here to
Dr.
kind of,
Robotnik.
this is why Emma's here
Yeah.
to balance
And-
everything out.
And it's funny because Jin Gitaxis in the story sounds exactly like Ben Shapiro. But anyway,
Oh, God.
besides
That's
that-
very true.
besides
It's
that-
very true.
Okay.
Besides that, so they're about to try to fight him. Then this mysterious figure comes in, and we've seen the Wanderer before. She showed up in War of the Spark, and we were like, "Who is this mysterious person? It must be Emrakul." No, turns out that is the
Nope.
Emperor, the lost
Of
Emperor
course.
of Kamigawa. She comes back, she saves their butt. They're like, what's going on with the Jin Gitaxis, etc. We've got to make a stop to this. And in the meanwhile, like there's this other rebellion happening with the Red Line factions that are trying to get into the city and topple the Emperor. So while that's happening, Kaito and Tamio go back to try to like handle Jin Gitaxis. It's a bittersweet ending. They stop whatever is happening on the plane, but Tamio gets pulled into New Phyrexia, and she becomes the first Phyrexianized planeswalker, which was devastating. I had to like, when I found out, I had to like not talk to anyone for an hour. It was just like,
I remember where I was when I read that. I basically got up and I had to step
Yeah.
outside of my house even. I was just like,
yeah. in the
Here we
magic
are.
lore universe, it's like, where were you when you found out?
And it's
Tamio
great
was
because it's
pricing
really
us?
hard to get those out of these little things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and so yeah, and then as it turns out, the reason why the Emperor has went back is because her spark is like weirdly not stabilized, so she has to hop from plane to plane to plane. She cannot stay in one place, and so the reality chip, they tried to use that to stabilize her for a while. It managed to do it for a little bit, but then it got broken. So now she's continuing her journeys. Kaito is continuing to try to track her down. And that's where we are. We have an encroaching Phyrexian threat. We saw Vorinclex last year, basically doing his own Vorinclex thing on call time, which mostly consisted of like, I don't know, Kool-Aid manning it through like the forest.
Pretty much. Pretty
Yeah.
much. It's pretty much Kool-Aid Man, but scarier with teeth and yeah, and you
No pants.
just don't, no pants. No,
No
pants at
pants.
all.
I'm just
No
like,
pants.
there is so much lore there, and I mean, one of the conclusions we came to when it came to the Strixhaven controversy
Uh-huh.
was that like it is very difficult to communicate all of this to
Mhm.
a massive audience who's like, oh, pretty art, or this one does math well. Like it's really hard to communicate that, and you have to really be deeply embedded into reading the fiction. I mean, how many Kamigawa novels were there? Because that's
Three.
the three
Three.
novels. They talked about that a lot during a lot of the the prelude to the release.
Yep.
I think like it's an interesting story, right? And I know
Yeah.
people buy into it for that. People really like that story because that's a whole other side of Magic. There are folks who are like me and is like, I like putting cards together and stacking them to 100 so I can play them. And then there are people who like to do that, like to collect, and like to see how the lore interacts with the mechanics, the art, and everything like that. And I think that's what makes Magic interesting, right? Like the reason why I have a Goblin deck is because my partner was like, Daniel, is there a card called Goblin Trashmaster? And I was like, yeah. She's like, can you get that for me? And I was like, I guess I'll build a deck. Peter, can you help me? That's how it started. But I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot with the story and everything is that one of the responses we got to the Killian thing was that, oh, read the fiction. Same thing with Legend of the Five Rings. Oh, read the fiction. It's there. It contextualizes these things that you kind of have a problem with. But I think with this set, thinking about the conversations that we've had as like the four of us independently, or even just like one-offs about Magic, I think there are a couple of things that we should really talk about. And Emma, in the document that you sent, in the notes document you sent all of us, I think you really outline at least all of the points that I'm feeling. You have a section in there where you said, why I am tired.
Yeah,
And
I
would
forgot
lo-
I labeled it that.
And honestly, I think that's, first of all, I mean, that's on brand for you. But what I'd love to really do
I
for
am
the-
perpetually tired. Yeah.
for the next hour is kind of focus on these things, right? We've kind of set the stage. This is why, we enjoy Magic. This is why it's special to us. And because it's special to us for various reasons, one, I can make squirrels, or they're like, hey, this is my community, or I really enjoy the story. This is why we want it to improve. So, Emma, I'd love to talk about this first point that you put under the why I am tired category of your notes.
Sure.
I'd love for you to kind of contextualize that, because I don't want to just read your notes when you're right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been fighting with this. Like, there's a lot of positivity out there around Kamigawa. There are little things where it's just like, oh, I don't like that. But I've been trying to figure out why it is. I don't know. If anyone's like, are you excited about this? Or they've done a good job with some of the development and the consultation, like, does that make it good? And for me, it's just like, I kind of got to recognize the stuff that's within me and my experiences that just make me I'm not that jazzed. Just like straight up. And that's not really necessarily the fault of any one thing or any one person within this larger thing that is Kamigawa. It's for me, and I think I've said this in the first episode of L5R, I'm just tired of samurai, ninja, organized crime and cyberpunk as being the go-tos for Japan. And like you said, you recorded me quoting this.
Yeah, your exact. I didn't record it, but your exact thing. I wrote it down. You said, "Doing crimes and fighting wars."
It's just like every time we see someone who's Japanese or even Asian in general, it's just like, yeah, they're out there doing crimes or fighting a war. So in general, I'm just tired of that. And cyberpunk in particular, making it futuristic. Yes, cyberpunk is quite deep at this point, but I can't ignore the origins of some of these things or some of the connotations behind a contrasting tradition with future and futurism. Yeah. So the hyper traditional contrasted with the hyper technological, which is an aspect of cyberpunk, but also like two big tropes about Japan that developed at different times. So the hyper traditionalism is something we get out of World War II, where it's like emperor worship, sticking to all of this stuff like institutional Buddhism and Shinto, and like some of that concept of Japan doesn't change. They're stuck in their ways and have weird beliefs. Contrasting that with the 1980s, like Japan's this techno center, this big, weird, like we don't understand it, but they're so advanced. Like those two ideas are just two big tropes, and they often go together. And cyberpunk smashes them together for sure. And like for me, it doesn't matter how far they've come or what's been done with it. I can't dissociate some of those origins and those connotations all the time. And this is something that if you're doing consultation, like you got to kind of keep track of it. And then you start seeing little bits and pieces here and there that reinforce it. So if someone like me is just like, ooh, some of this stuff makes me uncomfortable, as soon as you say one little thing that reinforces it, I'm just like,
I got you there. Yeah.
I'm done. And it's not even I gotcha.
Or not like a gotcha moment, but it's like, this confirms how I'm feeling.
You just kind of, confirmed it a little for me. And yeah, I think that's most of what was in my.
Yeah, that was like your first point. And I mean, like when you're talking about, I don't think they've gone and Michelle and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they've gone and said this is explicitly cyberpunk. But what they have done is they said, and I was watching the world building video prior to this just to make sure it was fresh. And they said, you know what, here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to contrast the traditional and the technological. We're going to have traditional architectural elements, and then we're going to strap neon on everything to make it sci-fi. That's what the that's what the lead said. That's what Emily Tang said. We're going to just put neon on it. And I mean, that's how I've kind of felt too. It's this really weird dichotomy that they want to lean on between the traditional and like this hyper techno thing that you've mentioned, Emma. But
just to answer your question earlier, it is referred directly as cyberpunk.
Okay,
in Mark Rosebar's
it is,
article.
yeah.
And so here's the thing then as well. Like I was talking about like cyberpunk with a good pal, and they were just like, cyberpunk isn't even punk anymore. This is just an aesthetic. The themes that they're kind of trying to touch on in the cards and stuff, this is, first of all, Western cyberpunk, which is an aesthetic. It's neon, it's high tech mixed with this sort of tradition. But if you look at Western cyberpunk and you compare it to sort of like Asian cyberpunk, they are very different things. Right? They explore very different themes. And we don't see this here. Western cyberpunk is also rooted in yellow peril, like Emma, you alluded to. It's deeply rooted in yellow peril. And so
this isn't the 1980s and 90s.
Yeah.
This is Blade Runner shenanigans.
This is Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But this is why the neon lights are supposed to evoke fear. Right? They are supposed to cause fear because you are supposed to be fearful of persistent advertising because of the Reagan era, right? People were scared of that. You're supposed to be scared of the neon lights. You're supposed to be scared of constantly being bombarded with messaging, right? The corporations and all that. But now it's just like, we'll put neon on it because that is a signifier of this cyberpunk aesthetic. But more in line with what Emma was saying, this is a signifier of this like hyper technological Japan, right?
And the loss of humanity. So
Mm-hmm.
also a theme within Cyberpunk is that battle between what is human and what is not. Like a huge theme in a lot of Japanese media. Like that's what Astro Boy is all about. Like what makes us human.
Mm-hmm.
But you pair that idea of Asian people not being from here, quote unquote, and also not being quite human, being emotionally repressed. And you combine that with scary industry and big corporations, faceless things that are slowly taking over because they have money and power and you can't find who's in charge. Like these were some of the themes of the original Cyberpunk stuff from Western creators. And yeah, like I said, I can't completely throw that out the window. You give me Cyberpunk stuff, whether it's true Cyberpunk or theme, and I'm going to be like, what are we doing here? Like what
Why?
Yeah.
I guess one of the questions I wanted to sort of raise with it all is, did this need to be a Cyberpunk set?
No.
Like, did we? And if not, like,
did it need to be Kamigawa?
Did
No.
it need to be coming? Well, that's another question.
That's a different question.
Yeah.
That's
Different
like
question.
I feel like that's a question where the answer is there are multiple stakeholders at place here, and
Yeah.
Kamigawa is the
I
natural
understand
product
that.
fit.
But
But the first question, yes.
But the first question is like, if not, what would be appropriate? What does in a Japanese super ultra modern technology aesthetic look like, if not cyberpunk? I'm not, and to be clear, I'm not asking this question because I don't want to be like, oh, if not this, then that, blah, blah, but it's just like, I'm curious, because I have seen a lot of like Japanese modern technological developments in, let's say, robotics, and yeah, you can always kind of tell if it is a Japanese design because there's a certain aesthetic, and that was not something I really saw in Neon. I keep calling it Neon Genesis Kamigawa.
I heard.
Or
in
we
my
can just
mind, I
call it
heard.
by what it's written in Japanese. It's called Shining World.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
literally what
Yeah.
the characters say. It doesn't even say.
Yeah,
Neon
Shining. It'd be
Shining
called
World.
Shining World.
Shining World.
Kamigawa. Yeah.
Just drop Dynasty. I think I've said this.
Why
before.
Dynasty?
Why?
Why-
First of all,
I-
yes.
I-
Why?
Why?
It doesn't really
Like-
have dynasties. They technically have one dynasty because it's an unbroken line, but like nobody calls it a dynasty.
Dynasty is like so mainland China. Like,
Yeah, that's.
can we
I was
not?
like, I first saw that and I was like, I don't know how offended I should be.
But yeah, Emma, I don't know if you had an answer to that, or if that's just a question that should just exist as rhetorically, like
Like, what does Japanese cyberpunk look like?
yeah, like what do we even want to go cyberpunk? Like, what would be a really, to kind of follow along David's idea of like,
Daniel.
Daniel, I'm so sorry.
What
Wow.
is
David's
Oh.
right there. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna leave now. I'm so sorry.
I thought we were friends.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like, I'll just start answering that question while
Yeah,
you're
go ahead.
embarrassed. Like,
Yeah.
I love
I-
you.
I love
I'm
you
not a
too.
huge cyberpunk consumer in general, so I'm probably not the best person to be like, here are some franchises to check out. But also, like, for a lot of it, for me, like, it's just like kind of dystopian future stuff in Japanese franchises could be taken as cyberpunk. But there's a very different relationship and perspective on technologies, and especially integrated technologies and robotics and AI in Japan. And part of that has to do with how robotics and AI have been depicted in like children's media and media in general, where in the West, like robots and all of that were always like an enemy or some inhuman problem to deal with. But like a lot of people in Japan, I already brought up Astro Boy. A lot of people in Japan grew up with very human robots and AI and technology that actually make people look less human because they're more altruistic. They are the better of us. And yeah, like in Astro Boy, like people come off looking real bad a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And Astro Boy's
Yeah.
just there's this very
I just
innocent and helpful individual.
yeah, something that also strikes me is like something that a product that came out a few years back that I felt was very quintessentially Japanese in perspective was Paro. The I don't know if you've heard of Paro, but it is a a robot that's specially designed to help the mental health of elderly folks within nursing homes. It's a big robot that looks like a big baby harp seal.
Yeah, the seals.
The seals.
Yeah.
And so they're warm and they respond to your voice and they will blink at you and interact with you. And I just sort of thought, I got to hold one once. It was just so pretty.
They're cute.
But it really, yeah, I just sort of thought that was a very uniquely Japanese like way to create a robot, I suppose. Like that's a very uniquely Japanese perspective. And that wasn't really something I saw in Kamigawa so much. But then again, I mean, the assistant. But then again, well, you did see the travel robot, but that's not really the same thing. This one just feels a lot more, Pado just feels more intimate. But again, like magic sets also tend to be fairly combative in theme because that's what the game is. So that's kind of unfortunate.
Also where it's like, okay, I understand that. Okay, here's the thing. I could be tired of it, but also understand that people like samurai and ninja and cyberpunk and organized crime. And also this is a great thing to use in like conflict situations and ongoing battles. But it doesn't make me less tired of it. Or like, they also, here's the thing, they didn't need to be samurai. We are in 2022, and the number of people who consider themselves samurai is very small, if next to none. So why, in this futuristic setting, do we have people who are just like, yo, I'm a samurai?
Same with the ninja.
I'm a ninja. Like, you can still have these people that do similar things, but you can drop the names.
Yeah, like it was already
I mean,
it was already there within the set. Like in the red white so for the red white samurai / warrior aggro like theme within limited, it says specifically samurai or warrior. So why have samurai? You can just drop it and have it be warrior. Just warrior.
It's the same thing about D&D, right? Here's like my thing. Like, first of all, to answer your question, Michelle, I don't think that this should be Cyberpunk, because it is very clear that Cyberpunk, I mean, what they are trying to present as Cyberpunk is not Cyberpunk. It's not punk. Like, as our friend that we know will say, this isn't punk. It's not Cyberpunk, and it really just uses Cyberpunk as an aesthetic. But then when you look at the cards, for me, I see this weird divide, right? They're trying to tell this story about, Kami and humanity kind of coming together, but then they're like, then here's the Gundams, like here's the mecha, and then here's the ninja, and then here's the samurai, right? Oh, and then there's some neon lights to tie everything together. And for me, it's like, it's very much used as an aesthetic, and I think that perpetuates the problem of Western sort of like cyberpunk, right? It fails to acknowledge its racist, let's be honest, its racist roots, right? And it basically reinforces, this is just an aesthetic to communicate Asianness. And they have said that, right? Now, for me, my problem is that they will always say, this is Japanese inspired. Everything is like, this is Japanese inspired, but we're going to make up a fake language, but we're going to use real Japanese words. We're going to use samurai, right? Like, pick a lane. That's kind of how I feel about this set. And you could tell that they're trying not to say it's Japanese because they don't want people to draw direct comparisons. But if you're taking aspects of Japanese culture, and this is something that, like, Emma, I know, like, you and I have talked about at length, if you are literally using signifiers of Japanese culture, like the sun, like the samurai, like the katana, like, I don't like kami is it's a word and it's a part of contemporary Japanese culture, right? You are not making something that's Japanese inspired.
You're invoking Japan.
You are trying to make a fantasy Japan, not a Japanese inspired thing. And
it's Japan. Like a lot of the like the sagas and whatnot. One of the things I did love was the feature of was featuring traditional Japanese crafts. For example, the yosegi, like a veneer work that we see, Hakone Yosegi veneer work that we see in
that stuff is wild.
It's beautiful, and like it's like you wouldn't like, why would you reference that directly if you weren't trying to make it directly Japanese, right? It's like a deep cut. It's a deep Japanese cultural craft cut. So
And they're using, and here's the thing, they made up like a fake language to put in the art and everything. But then on the beautiful, first of all, I will say beautiful lands for this set.
The art is
The art is
incredible.
top
All
notch.
across the
Oh,
board.
the
top
art,
notch.
no
this set is
No
like
complaints.
11.
No
No
complaints.
complaints. I am gonna go to this.
Oh, the art is
I will be
beautiful.
going to my local store this weekend, and I will say, take this cash
There's a new
and give
secret
me
layer
all
that
of
dropped. There's a new secret layer they dropped with some of the callbacks to old Kamigawa. They did it in the same
I don't care about the old
styling.
Kamigawa. I want the new lands.
No,
They-
but
they
those were
did.
like really good stuff.
Well, they dropped some new lands,
Yeah.
well, some of the lands, but in the ukiyo-e style, and it's just like
I take that back. I want
Yeah.
those.
Yeah,
but,
no,
but here's
that's
what
what
I
I
want
mean.
to say. Like, they're using a real language. Using a real language there, right? And that's the kind of tension that I see there. Because as we know, and I'm going to pull up the quote because I listened to the entire thing and I wrote out everything word for word. Emily Tang, the world building design lead, says, we weren't going into it with the idea that it would be Kamigawa. We just went in thinking, hey, we want to make a futuristic Japanese-inspired world. This time, we didn't decide it was going to be Kamigawa until halfway through Vision, that stage of the process. And this is where I think this awkwardness comes in, right? They're like, we're going to make this thing that's Japan, right? We want to make Japan or Japanese-inspired thing, right? But then, I realize I'm also out of focus. There we go. And then we decide, well, we want to align it with the rest of the product, which again, I think we're all aligned on. We would have preferred if it didn't happen, but it makes total sense.
I know why they did it, but like
Yeah.
Kamigawa wasn't worth saving. Like,
Exactly.
let's,
But again, there are fans and people want to see that. It's like same thing with Rokugan, right?
Yes.
But oh god. But when you take this pre-made thing that has this really weird history of, let's be honest, fetishizing a Western perspective of Japan, and merging with this new idea that you have, you ultimately get something that's like a step down from what you originally intended. And then that's what I think we see here, right? Like, Emma, you bring this up a lot, and rightfully so, like Ruth Benedict, like Chrysanthemum and the Sword, right? The land of contradictions, right?
Yeah, so Ruth Benedict, cool individual. Look into her. She's kind of rad. But like the work that she did was with the American government studying Japanese culture through radio programs and newspapers in the 40s, trying to help the military figure out how to better deal with and invade Japan. So like that's the context of her Chrysanthemum and the Sword. And it's straight up in the introduction, like this research was done this way. No Japanese people were spoken to. Good start, you know? But she came from a tradition in anthropology of cultural patterns. And so looking for broad, big sweeping patterns to help characterize a group of people in their society. And what she ended up saying is something that continues to this day is that Japan just seems contradictory. Like that's why like a nice, beautiful flower and a sword, like Chrysanthemum and the Sword. And so we get that with the tradition versus the hypermodern. And that's partly why the real leaning into historical aspects of Japan, particularly Sengoku and Tokugawa, and jamming that into a very futuristic setting will always kind of bother me. It's just like, here's this hyper futuristic world, but everyone's running around in samurai armor with katana. Like, people don't do that now. Like,
yeah, people don't do that now. I think in some ways they were trying to capture sort of the feel of like a modern Japan, like say in Kyoto or Tokyo. Like if you have, you know, we see shrines everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about what like modernity means, because if we're just
but
what
it's
tradition
not, but it's or what tradition means, but it's not the same. Like like you said, we don't run around. Like I went to Tokyo, no one went around with katanas.
Yeah.
No one went around with tachi.
And if they are, they're at like historical sites and they're tour guides,
Yeah,
and
they're
they're there
going
to
to,
take
like-
photos with. Yeah.
Or they're going to like
exactly.
kendo practice. Like
Exactly.
Kendo,
And
yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you. It doesn't matter what weapon they're carrying. That's just not the reality of if they put guns in here. Okay.
I was surprised that he didn't.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
guns are kind of off limits in Magic the Gathering in general.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
fair.
Then
Yeah.
see, that's why we have you here.
Yeah,
No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's
And
the
it's
I
like
forgot
that's-
about that.
and I think this relates to this idea of like outside and inside, the emic and the edic, right? Emma, you put this in your notes. This is if you're
Yeah,
not.
I did a little anthro lesson.
I was like, if you don't have a degree in anthropology or took a first-year anthropology course, we're going to talk about this now. I will say, like, before we dive into it, for folks who are just catching up or really want like a summary, I think it's really important, right? The point we're trying to make before we move on to this inside and outside, this idea of perspective, because this is something that we're going to talk about a lot here, is that this set leans really heavily, as you said, Emma, on these sort of competing tropes, right? The super traditional and the hyper technological, without acknowledging where these tropes came from in the first place and why they're problematic. The use of cyberpunk here is also problematic in its own right because, well, it is drawing on an aesthetic that has roots in the Yellow Peril. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this perspective thing. In that world building thing, Mendez, friend of the podcast, made a point that said, okay, they said there's a difference between the lies that we tell ourselves and the lies that we tell about other people. With Kamigawa, we wanted to focus not on the Western gaze attitude, not the lies told by outsiders, but the lies told by the culture itself. I think that's a great line.
It is, yeah.
I think it's a great line.
And it's a very good, like, I love that that's happening. It's a very noble thing to strive toward. And I like that that was in place. But as from an anthropological background, the ongoing question is that even possible? Particularly when the majority of your market is North American and you're trying to use references that they will get and latch onto. Like, how successful can you be? That's not a how well did they do. This is a larger question of how's that going to go?
Yeah. How is that possible? I
Yeah.
suppose.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it's
it's-
really
it's-
difficult.
And it's really, like, I think this is a question about perspective. Like you said, Emma, like, I think it's a noble thing to try to strive for. It's a cool thing to say on, like, that video to kind of tell people what your intentions are.
Mm-hmm.
But it becomes very difficult when the fundamental concept is rooted in Western perspective. And that's where it becomes really important to not only have cultural consultants, but also have Japanese creators heavily invest in the decision-making parts of the design process. I keep sending all of my friends this article about how they made the global series deck.
Yeah.
I keep sending
You
it
sent
to
it to
people.
me like 3 times.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
ways.
So
It's a great example.
it's a great example
Yeah.
of intent in Magic the Gathering. Now, in this article, I'll link it in the show notes. They basically identify 3 problems in the last time they tried to represent Chinese stories in Magic the Gathering. The first one was Portal 3 Kingdoms, right? So when they're talking about Portal 3 Kingdoms, they said the first mistake was that it's not canon, right? It's because it's not canon, this has a fundamental problem on people latching onto it and using those cards and playing them. The second thing was like literally the model in which they sold it, that Portal model, right? It was basically designed to teach people Magic and get people into Magic. So the cards were underpowered. It's a weak set.
Oh.
It's a weak set.
Mm-hmm.
Like
With some notable exceptions,
with
but yes.
some exceptions.
Yeah.
Like
Or
I
the
have,
Imperial
ship is still
Seal.
kind of busted.
yes.
Imperial-
So like I have
Imperial Seal.
I have been trying to collect some of the Portal 3 Kingdoms cards. They are expensive.
Also horsemanship.
Horsemanship, like I said,
So-
horsemanship is busted.
So I have
Yeah, put whatever you want. Put it on a horse.
the
Send it
crowning
back, you're
jewel.
ready.
No one can block it now because
The-
nothing
Yeah.
else is horsemanship.
Nobody has horsemanship.
Yeah, exactly. That like,
horse.
the crowning
Yeah.
jewel of my collection is this. This is an original Guan Yu
Sailor
City warrior.
Interchange. Horsemanship equals this game is
Yep.
bullshit.
I
Absolutely.
feel like we should just make a shirt and it's just this game is bullshit. That's
This
it.
game is bullshit.
That-
I'll just
yeah,
get a little.
that's-
I'll get a custom card and I'll just slap that down on spell table every time I think something
game
is
is
bullshit.
bullshit.
I also want like one of those like no samurai, no ninjas,
No
no,
samurai.
cyberpunk, but doesn't like
Yeah.
that something
No-
and
no-
something and something and
Two
something
crabs
shirt.
rage wars. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
here's the thing with like Portal is like not everything was really good because it wasn't designed to be competitive or
Right.
good, right?
Right.
And then the last one is like because of that like they weren't legal to play. So
Nope. Because it's a core set.
it's
Portal
core-
was considered a
and
core
it
set.
had
Yeah.
zero impact. So when they did the global series, that dual deck, they actually said, okay, we are going to do this right. And we're going I won't say right, we are going to do this better. For them, they said, okay, we want, and this is quotes WotC blog. They said, we wanted something that was traditionally Chinese and made sense in that world, but wasn't as prescriptive as Portal 3 Kingdoms. Instead of retelling a story, we wanted to do what we do well with our top-down, flavorful worlds of Magic. Find inspiration and then make a new world with it. Right? So
Flavorful.
flavorful. So what I thought was interesting about this is that not only did they do some really, really deep cuts on Chinese literature, they got a lot of inspiration, if you look at the cards, out of a really important book called The Classics of Mountains and Seas, the Shanhai Jing. It is basically a historical Chinese monster manual.
Yes.
It is
It's rad.
It's
It is really
great.
cool.
It is
It's
really cool. Anyone who wants to do Chinese D&D, just get yourself. You could easily get an English translated copy of the Shanhai Jing. Not all translations are great, but the
Yeah.
information in them is fantastic. There's some really wild monsters in there.
Yes.
Really wild stuff. But in their approach to this, they said one of the first things we decided was that we need to work closely with our Chinese teams and partners to help this succeed. So the David Pei, who is a senior brand manager on the Chinese team, was basically central to this process. So they had the Chinese team and some people from the North American team working together to make this like a final product. Now, that said, they had a huge Chinese influence on the design of this. When you look at those cards, they are absolutely incredible. They may not be powerful. There's some good stuff in there. But from like a narrative perspective, from the art, from the themes, from the aspects of my culture that they are trying to evoke, like it's a success to me. And that is the standard to which I'm holding Neon Dynasty. That's what I want to see. And
And
that
like
is,
that's a big deal. Like you're happy as a Quan. Like
I'm fucking happy, right?
Yeah.
And I don't say this as just like I'm a Chinese American. Like I say this as like I'm a really
American
Yeah, you're not American, first of
Daniel.
all.
Sorry. I'm really
You're not
tired.
I was gonna say, wait, what?
I'm really tired. Sorry.
You have dual
I-
citizenship.
Dual said no. I'm not American. God no. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, if you are, I'm really sorry.
No. I'll say this as like a CBC North American Chinese person. Like I'm a Canadian-born Chinese. For those who don't know, we don't do ABC, but CBC. Also aligns
like the
with our
Canadian
media.
Broadcasting Corporation.
Yeah.
The American Broadcasting Corporation.
But as somebody who's like personally, like familiarly, but also like academically very invested in this stuff, that's the kind of thing I want to see. I want to see how they approach the global series. I want them to be self-reflective of their mistakes and then take action on that. I feel like Neon Dynasty is like halfway there. I think they were correct in acknowledging that, yeah, we did these things wrong with the original Kamigawa sets. I think they were correct in identifying things that were problematic and trying to undo them.
I think they did really well with a lot of the process, and now with talking about the process that they put into development. Like, I'm not, despite the sound of me, I'm not mad about everything, but
This is just bullshit.
I-
This game is bullshit.
like I gotta say that there are still like fundamental things about Kamigawa that bothered me that then carry over. And there's certain things that on a personal level will just, they can't really win with, but also not everyone's going to feel the same as me.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, like I think this is a really good time to bring up the card.
Okay, let's bring up the card, and I actually
we'll bring up the
card.
card.
Here, let's bring up two cards.
Bring up 2 cards.
I think we're
Yeah.
gonna bring up 2 cards because
Yeah.
I talked about this.
Yeah.
Oh, and I totally messed up the overlay, so I'll have to fix it. While I fix this, carry on the conversation. I'm gonna
Yeah.
fix this.
I'm gonna,
But I was about to say, like, I think it's just I love how they, well, not really love. I like how they try to fix things internally, like lore wise, with the appearance of things. Like, for example, one of the things that always bothered me was the Orochi being like weirdly over sexualized, particularly the female like coated one being like
Those
big
sexist
breasted,
snakes.
boobily breasting ninja snakes.
Those reptiles, we know
that's
all
right.
those
Got-
memory
it,
glands.
got those mammary glands, and yeah, okay.
Boobies. And they also had like legs and stuff, and it was just like, this is weird, like this is not actually traditional. So one of the things that they did within the lore of the world was they actually had the Orochi lose a pair of limbs in order to like in a deal with like the kami and like to sort of appease and like keep relations with them so that way they can live in the forest. They continue living in Tukai forest, but they also got rid of their boobs apparently, because there ain't a single booby snake boob. No snake boobs.
No snake boobs.
No
in this set.
snake boobs. No
That's
snake
good.
boobs.
So
Things
Yeah.
we don't need in the world. Snake
I don't know,
boobs.
but there's like someone out there who's just like, where are my snake boobs? No politics and
Aw.
magic.
Oh
I
god.
This
wanted
just
my
ain't
booby
right.
snakes.
Yeah.
But I did like the use of internal diagenic storytelling to explain non-diagenic decisions. I thought that was rather a smart, clever idea to try to fix and justify like how they self-corrected on some of these things,
yeah.
which was good.
So
I mostly just like no snake boobs.
I messed,
Yeah.
That
messed
was a
up the
blessing.
overlay. We won't be able to kind of
Oh.
show it. I'll put it in the video, I guess, afterwards. This is what happens when you work 8.5 hours straight before this stream.
You can just drop a link to the
I'll
card
drop a
in the
link
chat.
into
for
the
now.
chat if somebody can drop a link. But I think the 2 things that we wanted to talk about were there were 2 cards in the set that kind of drew initial controversy, at least in the circles that that we kind of go in. The first one is obviously Ishin, and actually it works out that both Michelle and I got those cards in the packs we opened. I think one thing, I mean, why don't we talk about Ishin, and if somebody's in the chat, could you please drop that, a link to that into the chat on like
Working on it.
EDH Rec. Thanks, Jackie. I know you're always on that stuff. But
I did Scryfall. It has more stuff in there.
okay, sweet. I don't see it in the chat, but again, sorry folks, not on the screen. I'm only one person.
No problem.
But
Also, is my camera shaking?
no.
Is there
Okay.
an earthquake?
No, Hunter's sitting on my desk and he's purring really aggressively, so it's
I
kind of
could
making
hear
my
that.
monitor shake.
Um,
You can hear him?
We can hear the purr.
But that's okay.
Oh,
That's okay.
okay.
But basically, I think it got blocked. I can.
I did.
Oh, it got blocked. I can share it. So basically, what happened was there was a card that came out, and in Magic the Gathering, it's called Ishin 2 Heavens as One, and for me, when I first saw that, I basically was like, oh, are they trying to do like a white samurai? Turns out my assumption was wrong, which is I'm always happy to be proven wrong. But when they released an article about Ishin, there was actually a line above it written by one of the devs that said, he's a human samurai, and while that may be what Tom Cruise aspired to be that one time, it does give us a couple of neat cards to think about. And for me, it's like, yeah, you're thinking about The Last Samurai. You're thinking about a white samurai in your set, and I'm delighted to have been corrected that is a mixed character, and I applaud that. I think that's fantastic. But what I can't applaud is the intention behind some of the team members on it, because it shows us that we are still very much rooted in this. We're going to view this as Westerners. We are going to design this set for a Western audience, for that Western gaze, right? You could easily say,
no reason to bring up last year, bro. Just don't do it.
That was an uncalled for comment that really should. I'm surprised that anyone. Yeah,
honestly, and then well, here's the thing: they scrubbed it from the article.
We spoke out. We spoke out, and then they took it away, and that was good.
But it basically goes back to Emma. Your original point is that, look, you literally wrote, evaluating whether perspective is done effectively is near impossible, because it's true, right? There are all of these unconscious biases at play here, and no matter how many sort of like consultants you bring in, if your team is primarily based in the West, they are going to bring that influence, that perspective, into a property you're trying to make about the East. And we've seen that. We see that with that tradition versus technology. We see this like ninjas, samurai, fake Asian language, but everything's Japanese inspired, right? So this is why I hold the Global Series so highly, because we know that Wizards can do it. And we know that there are great people who work at Wizards of the Coast, right? We know that they are trying to do good, but these conversations need to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the point of Asians Represent. These conversations need to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So go ahead, Michelle.
Go ahead, Em.
No, go ahead.
It was just.
I was supposed to go ahead, Emma.
Mine's quick. It was just you were saying the first thing you thought when you saw it. The first thing I thought was Ishin means like one heart. First of all, that was a really good ramen restaurant in Toronto for a bit. But this is kind of one of those old things too, where it's like Ishin, comma, two heavens as one. Like I don't know what characters they use, so maybe that is the things, but I'm reading it without kanji and I see Ishin and think one heart. But are people going to think Ishin is just a direct translation, meaning two heavens as one? Like, and that's and something we see in caricature a lot, and in a lot of other Asian media for Western audiences, like the elaborate naming system, but also the connection between like actual meaning versus like title or extra meaning or extra stuff. So that was my first thought with that one.
Yeah, it's another example of like, this is Japanese inspired and we're going to make a fake language, but our names are real and these are Japanese names.
There was a lot of thought put into the names too, which and
we've seen
respect.
That with the cultural consultant who basically wrote about how the names went in. And I love that, and we've invited them to come onto the show, and we're going to try to do this.
Putting that out in the world.
No, the DM has already been sent. The conversation is happening.
Cool.
We're gonna try to make this happen. I'm really excited about this. But here's the thing, right? Like, Hiromi put out a really great thread about like, here's what went into the names, right? We need to talk about this more in this lead up. It shouldn't be in a freelancer's Twitter thread. I want to see this in WotC produced content leading up to it. I want to, and again, everyone's qualified and whatnot, but I want to see a roundtable of the Japanese people who worked on this.
Oh yeah.
Like why? Yeah. Like I want to see
including the diaspora.
Including the diaspora. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like.
I know you are. I'm just clarifying for
for everyone. But like, I want to see how the consultant of the diaspora worked with the team in Japan. I want to see how their perspectives were different, and I want to see how they kind of navigated that. Because you're designing for a Western audience. Let's be honest. So, on one end, it's really really helpful to have someone of the diaspora there. But I want to see that conversation happen. And we live in an age of Zoom. Like, Jackie's in Florida, Michelle's in Boston, Emma and I are in Toronto. These conversations can happen. And so that's where I kind of get disappointed when, we just want to say, it's Asian and we did this thing, praise us. I'll praise you. There are things that are great. I'm psyched for this set. But when I see something like Dockside Chef, So I'm gonna throw this in the chat. So, and I think this really ties into a point we were all going to talk about, and it's this idea of that outside versus inside perspective, and how it is a flawed statement because it is an impossibility, right? But also the idea that like we as Asian people all see and interact with the art and the story in very different ways. And when people speak up, be it about Critical Role, be it about Magic, our first reaction should not be, you're wrong, or this can't be bad because we have a consultant.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot.
Yeah, people have
I had that this week.
Specifically with this
Marginalized-
set too.
marginalized folks were not counter spells. Okay, you can't just use
We're
one.
not blue
Asian-
cards. We're not blue
We're
cards.
not blue cards. Like we
We're
can't just
not.
use one
We're
marginalized
not.
person to cancel out the opinion of another marginalized person.
There's
Like,
there's
you
a
can't
meme
just say
somewhere where
yeah.
it's like a shot of someone's table and it's the cultural consultant is the untapped blue mana. That's not the case.
Oh
We're
my
not.
God.
We're not
Yeah.
force of will. Like you please
Yeah.
don't. That's something we
Just, like-
see a lot, and please
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like despite all of the things done well, like I said, I have some fundamental issues with it. One of it is the depiction and the use and the human interaction with Kami.
Yes, I
That's
want to talk
something
about that.
Well, I don't know if we have time.
No,
but,
we
like,
could let's finish it. I'm okay to keep going if you folks are okay to keep going.
Oh, I'm fine.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, before we get to the Kami thing, I just wanted to quickly talk about this Dockside Chef
The
card.
Dockside.
Yes,
because I
we
think
did
this
have
is
different reactions.
because
Yeah.
I think this is the perfect example of how a system can be flawed if you don't have Japanese decision makers or Asian decision makers at the very top level, right? This is to me a card. This is a you see this card and I never use it and I throw it away and I never touch it because I see a card. It's a black card, so I'm already thinking of like the themes of like black mana, right? I look at this and it's Dockside Chef. Okay, cool. It's a human citizen. It's sacrifice an artifact or creature and draw a card. So it's like, oh, you kill things, right?
You kill things for a resource.
Kill things for a resource. But then you look at that flavor text, and the flavor text here says, the squirming is how you know it's fresh. So the art, which basically depicts a bowl of ramen with like an eyeball in it. There's an eyeball in it in the art.
I didn't see that eyeball.
I
was so-
I just
Yeah,
like,
so it's,
I
yeah,
got
if you
drawn
if
to
you
it,
get
but
the
for-
link.
but
yeah.
for me, it's like
zoom in, you'll see it.
But for me, it's every single experience I've ever had bringing Chinese food to school.
Yep.
And people say, oh, you're bringing noodles, you're eating worms. And this card shows me that this was not designed with that
Yeah.
insider and outsider perspective in mind. And
It's
that-
also like someone who was on my committee, one of my senior colleagues who's kind of in control of my career saying, oh, I'm going to Japan for the first time. I'm not going to be able to eat anything. And me saying, why though? Just that perception that nothing is edible in Japan.
Yeah,
is
I mean,
something we deal with.
and everything is exotic and gross.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It
and-
is. It sort of, and then it definitely ties into that very racist mindset too, of like, especially that we saw in the during the pandemic right now, where people are like, oh well, if Asian people didn't eat such weird things, we wouldn't have this. Like with
Yeah.
So
Yep.
and
yeah.
you could
We
say
had that at the
that-
start of the year.
yeah, yeah, right. And you could say that, hey, well, in world, it's the kami need to eat fresh things. Well, no. First of all, that's a terrible excuse because
Yeah.
of who you're designing this set for. You're designing this set
Yeah.
for Western consumption.
If I had to redesign that card in terms of flavor, I would make
What
it
would
a
you do?
pawnbroker. I'd make it a
Yeah,
pawnbroker. Like
100%.
bringing your broken like
Stuff.
artifacts, and you can get like another thing.
I want. You know what
Get your
I would
thing,
do?
Get a thing.
I want.
And
a,
that's
I want a
for
modder.
the
If,
mechanic,
if
yeah.
you're gonna lean in on the cyberpunk or whatever, this is somebody who can upgrade you. Who
Yeah.
Yeah. A
right?
modder. Yeah.
Like if you're going to lean into that sci-fi thing, like maybe I'm like an arms dealer, right? Or a spy, an intelligence gatherer, because you're literally drawing a card.
Yeah, you're drawing
Yeah.
a card, so you're getting intelligence. So it's
I'm
like
surprised
give
it
me-
didn't
give
turn
me-
out to be a nin.
Give me not even
It could've been a
yeah,
rogue.
this is actually, if it was an intelligence gatherer, it would be the perfect way to do a ninja.
Yeah. Like I don't understand why it had to be that at all. Like it was just like this random little card of, oh, the little flavor of the world, make it not just all about ninjas and samurai, and it's just like, and you chose that.
You could have chose just a pawnbroker or an upgrader.
Or a pawnbroker
upgrade
of information. You could literally just call it
Broker.
information
Yeah.
broker. Information
Yeah, information broker. That would be perfect.
There's the card.
fine.
It could still be a black card if you want to have that violent side of it, right? You owe them favors, right?
Yeah.
I think that's neat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, and I will point this out. So before even today, I did what. So I showed this to my mentee who identifies as, they're Vietnamese. I showed this card. They had no preface to Magic. Like, they have no idea about Magic. I only explained the rough elements of like what the black mana color pie identity involves, and then I showed them this card, and they had the same reaction of this exoticized Asian food.
Yeah.
Without even with very little me nudging in anything. I just said, this is what black mana usually archetypes reflect. This is what the card is. And so you get an effect, you sacrifice something to get an effect, and then the flavor text. And so from all those combined, they came to the same conclusion. So for somebody who doesn't even play Magic or even knows anything about Magic, they can draw to this conclusion.
For me, it's a very obvious one that it's harmful. It sucks. It's like telling me that my food is gross.
Especially in something where food doesn't come up very often. So
no.
Yeah, and you could say,
why didn't I get a food token out of this?
Recently.
I was like, why did we get a food token out of this? Like, that was the one thing I said.
Okay, here's why I don't think that they would have done a food token. So I think it would have been worse if they did a food token, because now you're saying, oh, you eat gross things, and you.
And then they create like a gross food token.
Yeah.
They create I don't know. You get like
I think it
piece
would have
of like a sushi plate with like weird things.
It's
on
still
top.
alive, or they'll like conflate it with like, how like Koreans eat like the squid tentacles, like they'll do something.
Which, by the way, is actually fine.
I've always wanted to. It looks great. First of all,
I've done it once.
Also, like, unless you have dietary, religious restrictions, I totally get that, and beliefs. But if you have the opportunity to try something and you are able to, do it.
Especially if you're in another country.
Exactly. This is yeah.
It's like if they wanted to do something food, like, it's way too late now, but it could have been cute. Is within like Shinto, most offerings are sweet and sweets.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been adorable if the kami are integrated into this world more, to have a food stall or some food element around.
Or like
a sweet
have you
shop
seen
a traveling cart? A traveling cart.
Yeah. No. But can you imagine a bento as an artifact?
Bento. Like, you can have a cute little bento, and it's just like little like onigiri, and it's just
We're all
actually
like,
I can see it now.
You could have done great things with food. But yeah.
So that said, you mentioned Shinto. I would love to just kind of. I think what we should do is lead into your topic on literally Kami and Kamigawa. I want to talk about that, and then I think we should go back into the patron questions. I want to know who the most dateable planeswalker is. Right? I haven't forgotten. I wrote it down, like I said.
That wasn't a patron question.
It wasn't a patron question.
It is now.
I made it a patron question. I do what I want. But I would love to talk about Kami. I want to know who the most dateable planeswalker is. And then I actually want to touch on the question of what, if anything, is this set doing to help bring an Asian person into the hobby and make them feel comfortable? Because so far we've talked about, hey, these are the tropes that it plays on. This is the unconscious sort of bias that exists within this set. Here's this card that is, in my mind, objectively bad. I want to know from all of you later on what brings someone in as an Asian person. But anyways, let's talk about Kami first, because that is central to both the narrative and the mechanical side of things here.
It's also related to Kara's question in our patron chat about, did they actually fix issues with the original Kamigawa?
Oh, okay, I'll add that, because I hadn't looked back in the patron chat, so I'm glad you caught that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I noticed it because it kind of relates to one of my main problems was the Kami War and the depiction of Kami and the nature of them. And I've read some of the stories and some of the background of the cards that have been posted. I haven't read all of the stories.
It's a lot.
There's a lot.
A lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah, but there are still a bunch of things that, and I'm going to be completely honest, that as a Japanese Canadian who has spent a good amount of time in Japan, I was raised Shin Buddhist, which still incorporates elements of Shintoism, and just living Japanese life incorporates Shinto stuff, because the kami are absolutely everywhere. They're kind of everything, but there's still a sacredness and things to keep in mind. And so the treatment and the depiction of kami and all of the things they can do and do through interactions with humans, a lot of it I'm just like, oh, it doesn't feel right. I don't like that, or oh, that's and I think part of that is a complication of trying to make something like kami, which is super complicated, and make it something that people are interacting with on a regular basis in the real, like, not just in a spiritual sacred manner, that they are things that are bopping around. So a bunch of the things I would say move more into yokai and other entities, things that they're known to do. There is some overlap between kami and yokai. Not going to get into that. But in general, I think there needs to be a certain level of respect toward kami, and especially a religion or life and philosophy practice, like a lived thing. How people are still living. And I don't know. Sometimes it gives me Pokemon vibes. Like, these kami are just hanging out, being cute. They're in the way. They're huddled around a light. Or they're like more like yokai and demons, in that they're actually messing with people or manipulating them. And then there are times when I think it's veering more into other cultures' concepts of gods and deities rather than Japanese concepts. And then there were things that just don't make sense to me, like channeling kami to gain powers, or allowing yourself to be possessed by a kami in order to draw from their abilities and their characteristics. Like, that kind of stuff is just like, doesn't make sense to me in my world of understanding of kami and Shinto.
Right.
And like, I made a list that
Yeah, I'd love to actually talk about that list, because there's two cards that you mentioned. I'll put them in our chat. Go Shintai of Hidden Cruelty and Go Shintai of Ancient Wars. You kind of talk about, like, you put, like you said, Go Shintai is a receptacle for spirits and kami. Can you kind of like talk about why you put that note in there, and kind of how that might contrast how they're depicted?
Yeah, and the fact that the term was used as a name of the card, also, it's like, that's a real thing. So Go Shintai is not made up. And it's an honorific. Like, Shintai is like, it's a thing. Go Shintai, like, you're being serious. It's a big deal. It's a big part of Shinto is that, yeah, the kami are everywhere, but they're essentially immaterial. Depictions of them as people didn't really show up until Buddhism arrived, and then we get a whole bunch of crazy stuff happening, like syncretism, but also the founding of what is considered Shinto, which is just not Buddhism. Essentially, all of the beliefs that were just not Buddhism became Shinto. And yeah, a Go Shintai is kind of essential because it's the only way to, in, I don't know, basic terms, lock down the kami. They are things that naturally draw kami, or they are ritually purified and become a receptacle to the kami. So the shrines often have objects or things within them that are Go Shintai, that attract a kami and give people a way to go and directly talk to, worship, or somehow interact with them. And so I'm not entirely sure how they're using, like, a lot of the times they're talking about Go Shintai as if it's people. And in real life, there are, as far as I know, two types of people that can be receptacles to the kami: priests and yokozuna. So in sumo, you will see sometimes the yokozuna wearing the essentially Shinto ritual ropes, and sometimes even the shide, the paper zigzaggy things. There are very few people who are, I don't know, allowed to, but also capable of doing that. And so for me, having a whole bunch of really negative kami living in negative people, making them do bad things, just clashes with my views and my feelings in Shinto and of the kami.
Yeah, these two cards that you sent are they're creatures. They're enchantment creatures.
Yeah.
I think the thing here that I'm kind of catching on, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that like these are real cultural rules that are being broken. These are concepts from Japanese culture that are being incorporated and kind of appropriated in a way that fits this story that they are trying to tell about a not Japan. But when you take something real, when you take something that people live, and you try to change it to meet a certain narrative, you ultimately fail that culture that you're drawing inspiration from.
And it's complicated because there are probably a lot of people in Japan who wouldn't mind or wouldn't care. And there are a lot of Japanese diaspora who aren't Shinto, don't practice. This doesn't really matter. And I've been thinking about it, like, would this bother me if it was made exclusively by like a Japanese creator and company? Because ultimately Japan can do a bunch of things with its own culture, religion, and depictions of society that others can't. But like, just I can't get over these uses of kami. And this is where I think, like, just don't use the word kami.
Yeah.
Because it's not an empty, meaningless, or old, outdated word. It's still a thing. These are still practices. Just to be safe, maybe don't.
Yeah, because it's a religious thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a living religion. And I think that's harkening back to, once again, the decision to make this Kamigawa. It's in the name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, you can't take it out. And again, it just goes back to the decision of just you hamstring yourself when you decide to incorporate a flawed product. I mean, if you're going to approach this set with that same lodestone, cultural touchstone, it's going to have these effects. And so this, I think, was clearly like, when I look at it from a mechanical perspective, I'm like, okay, I can see what they're doing here. They previously have seen shrines. They want to do like a shrine tribal thing, a shrine creature type thing. And, you know, they don't have to. They could just not do that.
Yeah.
And so,
or you could have like ghosts.
Yeah.
Ghosts possess people.
And it goes back to that question.
No big deal.
It's the question that you ask yourself is, why?
Yeah.
like, what does this benefit?
Why are you doing this, right?
Who does this hurt? Who does this benefit?
The only thing this is doing is it's for nostalgia, because Kamigawa started the whole shrine concept in the beginning, and then they did another cycle of shrines, and now we're back again to shrines, and here we are.
Yeah. It's like, because you've already set up that expectation with that association, you have to hit those same notes again.
Yeah, like there's the Myojin in the commander slot for the set boosters that are, you know, and I'm just like, why?
And
could we not?
I'll say this, right? If you looked at this set and you took away and you stripped it of the Japanese names, the writing, what do we have? Right? Certain elements are like let's disregard like the Japanese art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell this story in any other culture? Let's change the art. But could you tell this story in any other culture?
Yeah.
Right?
I think you could.
So then
why
are you making it Japanese? Like what about this makes it Japanese? Because to me, when I look at this and I'm like, what makes this uniquely Japanese? It's the
I
thing.
mean,
It,
go ahead, go ahead.
maybe I should rephrase that question. When I look at this and I'm looking at the set and I'm hearing Emma's thoughts on the Kami, I'm having my own thoughts on this really weird dichotomy of tradition versus hyper like technological advancement. Like to me, logically, it just doesn't make sense. Things just aren't going to be preserved if, like you said, Emma, there's no use to them. Why are they here? You are forcing tradition in a way where you basically say, oh, the things that are traditional about here are simply an aesthetic. The architecture, right? Things like that. It's like it lacks a certain logic, and it ultimately ends up kind of being a little disrespectful of how you are trying to portray Japanese people, especially when you're leaning on the fact that it's not Japan, but it's heavily Japanese inspired because we put all these real cultural elements and the real Japanese language in the set.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
honestly
another thing that
go ahead.
I
Sorry.
forgot and Sailor brought up was like there is mention of almost like blood and body sacrifice and human sacrifice a little for some of the kami who want to see like chaos and blood. And I'm gonna say like that's not really
It's not really what that's about.
no, because if we're talking about something being pure or clean in Shinto and even Buddhist belief, like blood and body and all of that is a no. Like I said, kami, if you're going to give them anything, they usually want sweets, they want beautiful flowers, they want sake, because who doesn't?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of now thinking like of Black Panther and the way that they created Wakanda. And how in a lot
That's
of
a really
ways
good
that's
example.
much more successful than what we see here. And I think it's because they put the African and like African diaspora perspective front and center within that movie and behind the scenes as well. I think there was no question when you watched it that even though Wakanda has modern technology, even more modern than us, if anything, that the futuristic technology that they have really should have been the template for what we should have seen in Kamigawa. What does a purely Japanese like use of technology looks like, which is the question we asked before. With that's a question they answered within Black Panther. What does a nation that has never been colonized, what does their technology look like? What does their music look like? How do they look? How do they behave with one another? And I think what they achieve there is far more authentic in terms of their perspective and in terms of their attention to detail, their care, much more than this. Then again, they also have a huge budget, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'll say this: like, I think Black Panther and like Wakanda itself is a really interesting exercise in like sort of speculative fiction, right? This is what these fictional sort of analogs of real cultural artifacts. This is how they can be incorporated into a sort of literal. Wakanda is a science fiction setting. It's awesome, right? But it's the same reason why I think that Black Panther is a far superior movie to Shang-Chi, right?
Yep.
Black Panther does everything that I want. Honestly, if you took Black Panther's story and you just made it Shang-Chi, I'd be fucking happy. I could watch both of them and I can get the same thing twice.
Yes.
But like, it's that thing with Chongqi. You basically were like, we want to have this sort of like Asian perspective, but everything about Shang-Chi's story is about being an immigrant and not belonging either at home or where you came from. And it also tells you that you can't be a hero unless you go back to China. That's what Shang-Chi literally says. Like, not the character, but that's one of the literal elements of the movie. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I see this set, I see like, okay, well, this futuristic Japan that they're trying to portray is like Emma said, a land of contradiction. It is a place where everything that the West sees in Japan is just amalgamated into one. It's mecha, not like mecha with double C's. It's mecha like robots. It's giant robots. It's ninjas. It's samurais. It's, big skyscrapers.
It's origami.
It's origami.
It's origami.
But then it's also like there's this religion that we are trying to allude to and this spirit world that we are trying to allude to, but we are drawing on something that's very real while not actually trying to replicate it because we think we're being respectful by not making a one-to-one analog. But if you use the word kami, you're going to draw those comparisons and these sort of negative sort of feelings. Like, Emma, you have, been vulnerable and expressed that. They won't go away. They will be there.
It won't catch everyone, but it caught me. Like, if you remember when we did the original Kamigawa set, I was like, this is genuinely upsetting to me.
Yeah. And that said, I think one of the things we should do is like answer some of the questions, because we had 2 questions that I think we should kind of address. One was by one of our patrons who said, how does this help bring an Asian person into the hobby and make them feel comfortable? I think the marketing alone, the tropes that they are, and I see when you say Asian person, I cannot speak for somebody in Asia, because I'm going to assume that question is about somebody of the diaspora or somebody who just lives in North America, right? There are things in here that are meant to, that we see in our pop culture, and it's samurai, ninjas, and mechs. It's conflict. It's that cyberpunk aesthetic, right? Not every Asian person will feel the same way that we feel about cyberpunk. There are going to be tons of people who say, I have no problem with this. And to them, I say, that's totally okay. But that doesn't mean that how I feel about it is incorrect. And so for me, I think there's a lot that's going to bring people into this. And it's definitely that futuristic setting. It's the fact that the designs look slick. The art is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tasty.
It's tasty.
It's good stuff.
It's good.
Yeah. I think for me, to answer that question from my perspective, because I mean, I've seen, as another Asian diaspora, Vietnamese diaspora person, we've seen these tropes before. We've watched this anime, we've seen all this stuff. I was looking for something deeper. And as someone who enjoys researching and doing crafts, much to my partner's consternation, I like to do all the crafty things. I loved seeing the deeper cuts. So I mentioned this before. I adore woodwork and marquetry from across the world. It's one of my things. I just like it. It's cool.
It's cool.
It's cool stuff, from stuff from Versailles to what I mentioned before, Hakone Yosegi marquetry. And if you're not familiar with this, it is a really old technique that goes back to the Edo period. And it's about meticulously combining bits of different colored wood geometrically, and then gluing them together, and then shaving sheets off, and then putting them onto boxes or other decorative objects. It is something that not everyone would know unless you understand and have an appreciation for that craft. And I think I know why they chose that. And the art I'm speaking of is from Boseiju Reaches for the Sky. I think that's what it's called. Boseiju Reaches Skyward.
Yeah, Reaches Skyward.
Yeah, it's also a really good card. But what I love about that approach to that art is that not only does it evoke, you can see the individual wood grain lines, but it also has a sort of weird pixelated quality to it, right? So in some ways it's trying to evoke both things, but it stays very firmly within its lane of, this is a craft, and we are going to celebrate and showcase this craft, this uniquely Japanese craft within this setting. So for me, seeing that someone thought to incorporate Japanese woodcraft, I'm like, yes, thank you. And then also there's another saga that shows 2 vases stacked on top of one another inside a traditional Japanese kiln. as a ceramicist, I was also excited to see that because I have visited a few of the traditional kilns and they're huge. And like inside, they're just filled with flame. You would see stacks and stacks of vases like that inside traditional kilns. And that was really fun. On the backside, when you flip it, you can see the finished vase with like wreathed by smoke because the firing has been completed. So I was like, yes, ceramics.
I think
Wood.
that I think there are some really, really incredible things in this set. Honestly, I have a Boseiju Reaches Skyward Emma. I have 2 of them. I'll give you one for your squirrel deck because I think it's really good for your squirrel deck.
It's really good for the squirrel deck.
It's really good for the squirrel deck.
Squirrels, like
I mean, it's a tree too. Do you
like-
think about it? It's a tree.
like,
so
I
it
am-
kinda
I
matters.
If they had given me some cards with Hokkaido squirrels on it, I would have lost my mind.
a missed
I
opportunity.
wish they had Hokkaido
They're
squirrels.
so
I'm not gonna lie. Like, you know, you and I
As
have
a
known each other.
Momogatu.
We've known each other for like almost a decade. We've known each other
Yeah.
for over a decade, and
Yeah.
when I'm looking through these, I'm like, I'm not shitting you. Like, I'm looking for squirrels for you.
Japanese squirrels are adorable.
They're adorable. They got the little ear tufts, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
now that said, like,
Or there's the Esomomanga with the giant eyes.
I want to,
Oh,
so
I
like,
didn't
I want to
know
talk
those.
about things that like we really like, right? Like, what did we like? That was one of the questions, and what gets people into this. I think that gets people into this because these are 2 questions. The thing that gets people into this is going to be the artistic side of the game. I don't think people are gonna just hop into Magic the Gathering, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty because they like the story. That's something you kind of discover as you play the game. I think people are going to get into this because it's cyberpunk, because it's mecha, because it's ninjas and samurai, and the art is gorgeous. I think
And there's also references like Miyamoto Musashi
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Ishin.
Yeah.
right.
But like the question is about comfort though. Like
Yeah, that's
True.
you
true.
may
That's
be able
it.
to get a lot of people into it, but I think
How do
ultimately
you make them
comfort,
stay?
How you make them stay is the other thing.
comfort is super complicated because that has to do with the players themselves, the community. Like I never would have just picked up, made a deck and went and played with random people. I'm playing with people I already know and trust, majority of which already are Asian themselves and
Yeah, most of us are Asian.
look at things differently, you know? Like
Yeah.
I don't know if any like this product, just because it exists, will make Asian diaspora more likely to come in or feel comfortable. That's up to everyone else.
And I also think that
Yeah.
has to just deal with the community and like being like, how do you react to people's criticisms of this? And so far we've seen it's negative, right? It's the problem with fandoms. It's how dare you attack the thing I love, because you attacking the thing I love is an attack on me. That is one of the problems with fandoms, right? It's a thing we saw with like Oriental Adventures. It's like, this isn't racist. I'm not a racist. My wife is Asian, right? That was like a whole thing with Oriental Adventures. It's like, no, you're wrong. You can't call this racist because I'm not a racist. And yeah, I think that people are gonna like it. I'm sure Asian people will like this, but I think the thing that keeps them in Magic is finding community.
It's the
And
gathering.
It's the gathering.
The,
Oh,
the,
God.
the other half of the game, the gathering.
Yeah, it's the gathering part, and I enjoy playing Magic. I'd say 80% of the reason why I enjoy playing Magic is because I like the people that I play Magic with.
I thought you were gonna say 80% of the time.
80% of the time. No, it's because my decks work. No.
I
No.
enjoy playing Magic maybe 65%.
65% of the time. No.
The rest of that percent is this is bullshit.
This is bullshit. This game is bullshit. No, for me, it's
Right,
like,
right,
I'm
game.
not to be like sentimental or anything, but like I like it because of the people I play with. Like I like just like chilling and playing Magic, and it's fun. And that's what's gonna keep people staying, like having those communities. It's why like I don't think D&D Adventurers League is a great way to get people into D&D because of that community and how people play it. I think half of the battle of getting an Asian person to like this is making them feel welcome, and making them feel welcome is not just in how the game's designed, the story, and the art. It's also in like the community. So that's my take on it. I don't know if any of you want to add anything to that. I think we answered both of those questions. Go for it.
I mean, I can kind of add to it a little bit, just because like you know, part of the reason that Michelle was so influential in bringing me back to Magic was because I could find another community again to talk about Magic and play it potentially. And that was the thing that I missed for the longest time. And that's why usually I always come in and out of Magic, was I never really could have a steady group. And there was a part of my life when I was doing competitive, and that in of itself is its own thing. So, but like, it's really about that community aspect, and that's always the biggest part of Magic the Gathering, or anything really, is just having people you can trust to be with, and that you love to be with, and sharing an experience together. So and that's the thing. And I feel like even when we went through all of this, we all still felt together about like, okay, yeah, let's talk about why we feel this for these things, because we all trust each other, we all love each other, and so we want to explore these parts of us and explore why we are feeling this way, and what can we do for it, or what can we hope for better.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, this is the whole part of this is like, we're not trying to be negative. We want to make this better. And in order to have, people feel more comfortable in this hobby, we need to have these hard conversations.
Yeah. And it's so amazing to have seen the effort and care put into a lot of like the art and representations of like traditional stuff. And it's really clear. I mean, is this better than old Kamigawa? Oh, definitely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, way better. If that's our measure of success, this is a huge success.
This is a huge success. But could it be better? Yes.
Yes.
But you can tell by how complicated the responses are and how much explanation is needed, and that they have done so much better. But the things that still bother someone like me are really complicated.
So my mentee loved this analogy I gave. It's like, okay, if you're imagining American football, you're on one end of the field, you run up, you get your plays all the way to the 70 yard line.
Yard.
Okay. You get two-thirds.
Sorry, I had to.
2/3 of the way.
I had to.
Yeah, that's fine. You get 2/3 of the way, and instead of trying to go for the touchdown, you just aim for a field goal, and you just decide to kick the football all the way up instead, and just settle. You just decided to settle instead of like.
This assumes I know what a field goal is.
Well, okay.
you know the basics of football.
I didn't know that you could run and then just kick it through the thing. Is that a thing?
Yeah, you run and you can kick it through the thing.
I thought that was like a setup thing. Like, okay, sorry.
You have to set up for it, but you can do it.
Okay, you can kick it.
Okay, yeah, because the way Jackie was describing it, I thought like I see somebody running with the ball, and then they just stop and be like, instead of a touchdown, they line it up and throw it. I was like, I've never seen that.
I mean, like, it's important. I know that we've been talking a lot about how it can do better, and that's a thing. Like, we know the potential here. We see the effort, we see the energy, we see the talent. It's like seeing, kind of like going Jackie. It's like seeing someone like who
you get so close to the goal marker, and
we're doing the Olympics right now. Like this is like you were so close to medaling, or like you were so close to gold. Here, let's take this. Let's look at your performance. Let's play back some of this footage. Here's how we can do better next time. And that's the thing that I think I want to sort of just call out is like, this is the right path. You are headed in the right direction. You need to keep going. And I hope they do. As long as we talk a lot about like how some things are just never gonna, nothing's ever going to be perfect. Perfection is something that we cannot achieve as humans, but it does not mean that we should not strive. And the fact that, Wizards is striving and is striving hard, I think is a good sign. My only hope is that, if this set takes off, this set is successful, which I think it has been, that they will continue to put the funding and the people in to pursue this to what will hopefully be the next level. And the next time we sit down and have this conversation, we can, we'll have more to talk about with that. Yeah. It's an ongoing dialogue. And even though, we're sitting here critiquing a lot of things, I'm looking forward to hopefully having another one.
And I want to add to that. I think an important thing to add to that is if they see that it's a success, they will, make more of it. I agree. At the same time, I want them to see it as a success, but also know why it didn't succeed. Because it's easy for a large company to be like, yeah, this was really great, make more of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's
get
what we
better.
But that's not what we
better.
want.
Get
we
better.
want it. We want it to be. This was a success. How can we make it an even bigger success next time? And honestly,
Right.
for me, it's the model of the Global Series. It's what they did with the
Yeah,
Global
You
Series.
had it right there.
They literally had it.
first
You've
time.
already done it.
It's like you literally had the formula and you decided to just change one thing on the recipe.
Yeah. That's
there's a question of scaling, but the principle of the
Yeah.
approach
the intent
should have been
the
preserved.
intent.
Yeah.
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 The intent. But
Yeah,
that said, we've gone way longer. We
Do
could.
you need me to talk about a dateable planeswalker?
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
I mean,
still.
we need to end on something positive, right? I mean, we have been talking about positive things. We think this set is a success. It is it is a successful set, weighed down by probably an unconscious over reliance on problematic tropes. Let's be honest there. The fact that I hate when you say this is like. When they say this is like insert Asian culture inspired, because that's your excuse to just appropriate. It's, and I'm not saying that they appropriated this time around, but there is a lack of tact when they're thinking about when they're picking and choosing the real world cultural elements that they are trying to make analogies for in this game. And I think that's where it fails. Now that said, you know what's amazing? Our amazing patrons. They are amazing. In fact, they are so amazing that they are honorable.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's right. I'll say it. Normally this is the time when my partner Sarah brings Marla. Marla has done a lot related to Magic the Gathering. Marla has.
Have you just put her off entirely after exposing her to the Doom box of light?
Marla has squeaked for Magic. Honestly, Marla loves all of you, and I don't want to subject Marla to that.
It's fine.
But that's
fair.
Our amazing patrons make this possible. They are the reason why Asians Represent can still, exist. Right? We do a lot of free emotional and intellectual labor here. Marla is here. Hi, Marla. Marla, do you want to say hi?
She's like, yeah.
Oh, squeak.
so
Squeak. Hi,
so
Marla.
grumpy.
Hi, Marla.
So
A
grumpy.
little bit closer this way. Oh, there's Marla. Hey, everyone. Marla wants to thank you, amazing patrons. Our Guardians of the Realm, Brooke Bright, Pixel Grotto, and Daisy May, and the most honorable, right, Marla? Marla, can you say honorable? The most honorable Metal Weave Games, Valorous Games, Dungeon Glitch / Matt, and the most honorable 2 times Epic Impulse. I'm gonna change this, Marla, back to here so more people can see you. Marla, you don't.
One day she's just gonna rage barf on you on camera.
She-
Exactly.
Okay, Marla. Thank you, Sarah. Love you. But yeah, Marla thanks all of you, and in now that I have my lucky cat here, let's end this stream with I'm gonna open a pack.
Okay.
I'm going to open a pack, and we're going to get something cool. But I want to thank all of you folks for tuning in to, this stream, watching this YouTube video, or listening to this in audio format. We really appreciate you, and if you like what we do on Asians Represent and you want to support what we're doing in the community, if you want to, see more content like this, or you want to get detailed show notes, support us on Patreon. We really appreciate it. So, let's see what I got. Treasure token. Okay.
Okay. Good stuff.
Art, I got this stuck together. I got one of the dragons. I got at sushi the blazing sky.
Oh, that one's pretty good.
That one's pretty cool.
Oh,
that's
that's
really
That one's
neat.
really nice. I saw that.
I
art.
really
It is
like
so
that.
nice.
I got
Yeah, that's the alt art one.
Oh, look at that! Look at that bad boy! That swamp
Oh,
there.
hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's my
Give me
first
those
one. That's my
lands.
first one. That's fucking beautiful.
I'm spending so much money
I
on
got,
just the lands alone.
I know, right? I have. I'm gonna replace all of the lands that are in my Yuriko deck with these.
Yeah, that's.
I got a Nazumi
Oh, man.
Blade Blesser. This is a rat
It's a good card.
It's a rat.
It's a Splinter.
It's a rat samurai. It's
Splinter.
It's Splinter.
It's Splinter.
Well, no, it's the old. Yeah, it's the no. Isn't it the other one that's the Splinter? The
Oh, is it not?
the-
Oh, no, that's the other one. Sorry.
Okay, I got
The other one is Splinter.
Ah,
But
Sarah,
there's a Ninja
Sarah,
Turtle in this set.
Sarah.
Oh,
Sorry.
excited.
Oh, you did get it.
I got a lucky offering.
Yes,
Oh.
the luckiest of all.
I love how the flavor. I love how the mechanics are basically just the cat will destroy everything.
The
It
cat
just
will
not-
destroy everything.
Which I was
This-
like,
so this is
that's
by
accurate.
positive. This is by positive here. Lucky offering. There we go.
That's
Love
Hunter
it.
showing up while we're playing
Yeah.
Magic and sitting
Yeah.
on my cards.
I got a
yeah.
Cyber
Yep.
Trespassers. This is it's an origami card. It's a ninja. It's a ninja with a channel ability that causes creatures to untap and then to tap and then not untap during their next step. It's interesting. That's the kind of art that will get people into Magic.
It's actually really good.
It's really good. Especially if I've got a planar incision. It's got one of those Phyrexian that Phyrexian character on it. I don't.
Jin
yeah,
Kataxis
Jin
Yeah.
gets
with the
yeah,
epic
Jin
pants.
Yes,
epic
this is the pants that everyone's talking about. All the youths are talking about. I got an explosive entry. That's a Kaido card. This is the second one I got today. That's pretty cool. A Gloom Shrieker. It's a cat beast.
Yep.
It's a tiger with a lion's head and a snake for a tail. Oh, it's a cat card. That's kind of cool. I like that art. I hope that's an art card. I don't know if this is a creature.
That's the stand. That is the standard.
I got a. Oh fuck yeah! These cards are great. A secluded courtyard, super good land.
Oh yeah, that's a good card.
Oh come
It's a
on!
very good card.
It is.
It's not
very
working.
good.
Anyways,
Your camera can't handle it.
my camera can't handle how
Handle
good.
the awesomeness.
The secluded courtyard is really good for like my dragon deck. Amazing for that deck.
Yeah, if you like, if you play like a kind of creature focus, like one particular creature type, and you play a lot of color manas,
I
you might
got
want that
a
card.
Raito Sentinel. It's an artifact creature. It's a construct. It's got an ETB effect where a player has to mill 3 cards, and then it returns cards to the bottom of your library. Neat art. It's one of those guardian lions. Azusa's Many Journeys. This is a saga. Oh, this is I'll give this one to you, Emma. This is a U card.
It's a good card.
This is a saga where he lets you.
You said that like,
It lets you, oh no, this is it for you because this lets you play an additional
this
land.
is a U card.
This is a U card.
Look,
Dirty
you want to
green
play more
player.
lands.
Yeah, this is a really good card. I'll add that to the Emma pile. Oh,
Thank you.
What did you get?
What'd you get?
look at that bad boy.
Oh!
Look at that
Jin
bad boy.
Kataxis.
Jin
So
Kataxis.
busted. Such a
So
busted card.
Fuck yeah, that's how you end. Okay, and then
Oh
I
my
got
God.
I got a bronze plate boar in
I just want to
foil.
show. I just want to show
There we
the
go.
card that I just opened.
Oh
Ooh,
yes,
ooh.
I love the like I think I said early on.
I'm
like, when
so
they were
happy.
spoiling the set. I will say when they were spoiling the set, I just knew. I
those
just
pants.
said I'm spending so much money on lands, like more money on the lands than anything else. That's
Yeah.
all I'm spending money on.
I also, when I opened this
Okay,
pack,
I'm gonna
I
open
also
one more
opened
while I'm
a
here.
card. I hope also opened this
What is that?
from
Oh yeah, the OG
the OG.
Oh, the OG.
Kamigawa.
What's her name?
Michiko Konda.
Yeah.
Michiko. Yeah,
Michiko Konda. Sorry. Yeah.
Kunda, yeah. Michiko was one of the main characters in the novels for Kamigawa. And Michiko was the daughter of the emperor. Which is great when you're like, I don't know
I
why
got
the
a,
spirits are angry. You don't know the fact that
Tatsunari
your
Toad
father
Rider
stole
art.
a spirit?
Tatsunari Toad Rider.
Tatsunari Toad Rider.
That's super cool.
Oh,
Yes.
so
And-
The
good.
Japanese art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you folks are gonna be jealous. Guess who got a 2 of these lands?
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I got an Upriser Renegade with that sweet hairdo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the sweet pompadour.
Sweet Pompadour.
Yankee.
Now for
Yeah,
folks who are like
Yankee.
for folks who are kind of like watching us do this, when we play Commander, we're gonna do it via spell table, so you'll be able to see our cards and everything. We've never done Magic before, so that's gonna be fun. I got an Imperial Subduer. It's a samurai.
Tanuki. Tanuki. A greater Tanuki.
Greater
which is
Tanuki.
better
Well,
than
that is
the
actually
lesser
a good...
Tanuki, which is
An automated
Yeah.
artificer. This is a weird one because this one, actually, if we're talking about like setting wise, this one is a stark contrast to like the cyberpunk aesthetic that they're really going for. It's Automated Artificer. It's an interesting one. Network Terminal. I've got one of these already. Moonsnare Prototype. Oh, it's interesting. Thirst for Knowledge. Oh, that's quite good. Okay. Containment Construct. Oh, hey, I got this Okiba Reckoner Raid. I think we talked about that.
It's very good.
yeah.
It's very
It's
good.
a very, very good card.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it's very
It is.
good. I'm excited. I got that one. And then I got the Dragon Kami Reborn. That's this rare that I have here.
Yeah. Oh, yep.
Oh, that's a really beautiful one.
It's super
That is
beautiful.
nice. The art is nice on
and
that
the
one.
art
It's
on
based
the-
off of folding screens.
The art
Just
on
so
the back
pretty.
is really good. Love it. Doesn't matter. And then I got a Reality Heist in foil. Super good for the Yuriko deck.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm a little bummed because I bought one of these already. But yeah, that said, thank you folks for tuning in. We've been going for a really long time. We'll see you next time. I really appreciate you, and I hope you come back for more conversations, not just about Magic the Gathering, but about Asian representation in tabletop. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.